Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books. Today we're talking about a very specific investor, not Dan Loeb. It's Vivek Ramaswamy, and he is destroying woke Disney. When I say he's destroying woke Disney, it doesn't mean he's got control of the whole company or anything like that. But he's written a very well-written letter to Disney, and directly to Bob Chapek, talking about what the problems are with Disney and what they need to do to correct them. Now, why is Vivek Ramaswamy a big deal? It's not just because of his amazingly cool name. It is because he's created an investment company called Strive Asset Management. And the purpose of Strive Asset Management, as it says here, why Strive, is to give people access to businesses and investments with their retirements and their retirement funds for companies that are not mixed in with politics. Now, they will still invest in companies like Disney that are clearly well hooked into politics and, woking up the hell out of their content and their employee and hiring standards. However, he does it with an eye to try to make changes to the company. So Strive is important. It's something important. Vivek is a multimillionaire. His net worth is, $500 million. Very entrepreneurial guy. And he specifically created this investment company, Strive, so that he could influence industry. They don't have billions of dollars under management. I was reading they have a couple $100 million in their regular fund. They have like $11 million in the fund that's investing in Disney. So $11 million straight up is not a lot of money. But he is an important voice. He has a very strong media presence. He has met with the CEOs of a couple of these companies. I know he was talking about a meeting he had with the CEO of Chevron, trying to really impress on him. Listen, forget these woke guys. Really invest and really focus on whatever makes money for you. I mean, obviously he could say that, but look, he's getting the meetings. He's a multimillionaire. He's getting a lot of media as well. He's been on Fox News often. He's been on CNBC talking about this. And the guy's a thinker also. He wrote Woke Inc., which was a very successful book, Inside Corporate America's Social Justice Scam. And he just recently had this one come out, Nation of Victims, Identity Politics, the Death of Merit, and the Path Back to Excellence. This is the thing that gets me the most about all this SJW stuff, the concept of the death of merit, just replacing merit. That is the absolute destruction of society. If that's allowed to continue, if that's allowed to happen, there's only one way that it can end, and it's a really bad way. I also want to thank Bounding Into Comics, because they kind of gave me the idea everybody but me is covering this, and this is definitely my kind of thing. So it's important for me to cover it. So I'll put a link to their article as well, Bounding Into Comics, that really did do a great job on this. So that's Vivek. That's his background. I'll put a link to his background as well. I mean, he's done some very, very significant things. He's done a good amount of writing. It's good to just kind of be aware of what he's up to. Okay, and those are his 2 books. Now, we've covered this before. We have covered some of Disney's woke toys not selling. This came from Bleeding Fool, another great website. I'll have a link to this in the description. And we did a video. Where's our video? Woke toys not selling. And great job at Bleeding Fool. That came from another article from a website called That Park Place. That basically just an insider from the Disney operation letting people know, hey, obviously you think it's not selling. It's worse than you think it is. And basically Disney doesn't care. They just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. What's the end result of that? Now, this was some positivity. Dan Loeb, who's a billionaire activist investor, wrote to the CEO of Disney also and to the board saying, hey, you know what? We should make changes at Disney. You don't have the right management at Disney. Really good points. His big thing, and some people miss this, and look, I don't know Dan Loeb, okay? He's not on my speed dial, whatnot. But what I will say is I think he also wants to talk about woke not being mixed in with the brands. He has supported, he's an interesting guy, this Dan Loeb. He supported actually Obama, but he also supported school choice very aggressively, which is very not Democrat. So he's another guy almost like Zaslav, where it's like, look, it's just about business. Your personal things are your personal things. When it comes to business, you got to focus on making money, not using your business to push politics, which so many companies do. Then we did another video called Woke Broke Marvel, talking about all the failures at Marvel affecting Disney Plus, the movie theater results, and toy sales. And everyone knows woke characters don't sell, but that doesn't stop Disney from trying to push them. So into Vivek's letter, and I'll, of course, have a link to this as well. Before we get into it, please do subscribe to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up when you like it. You guys have been so amazing with subscribing and sharing the channel, and I really appreciate it. It's really helping me build the channel, and that's just kind of what I need to do right when I'm ready to start publishing, and I'll be publishing my own non-woke comics again very soon. Okay, this is the letter to Disney. This was sent on September 19th directly to Bob Chapek. And I'm going to go over the whole letter, okay, because it's very well written, it's very focused, it's full of good information, and it's something worth knowing about. Okay, dear Mr. Chapek, over the last year, the Walt Disney's public approval rating plummeted from 77% to 33%. You'd think that's something that would be more commonly known. I know a lot of people were not happy with Disney and a lot of their recent choices, Netflix as well. But did you know that in the last year, 1 year, their approval dropped that much? I didn't know. An unprecedented collapse following Disney's public embrace of controversial political positions in deference to social activists. Strive Asset Management recently became a shareholder of Disney. On behalf of our clients, we write to ask you and your board a fundamental question. How do Disney's politicized behaviors advance the economic interests of Disney stockholders? That is the question, the fiduciary responsibility. We believe they do not, and we respectfully suggest that Disney rectify its missteps ahead of next spring's proxy voting season. The proxy voting is something that they do at board meetings, and I guess they have one coming up in the spring, and the purpose of that is to elect the board of directors, depending on if they're up for re-election, also talk about management, the results of the business, and sometimes big questions facing the company. They'll have stockholders vote. Disney is a beloved American brand. There's perhaps no more iconic and beloved American company than the Walt Disney Company. Today, Disney's mission is, quote, to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovative technologies that make ours the world's premier entertainment company. It was once much shorter, though. Make people happy. And until recently, Disney has largely stayed true to both. If Disney can avoid being conscripted into political warfare, we believe the company is well positioned for growth. I was saying the same thing, like when they announced Disney Plus, and their position for Disney Plus and the way they were rolling it out, it looked like they would crush Netflix. It looked like they could do amazing things with Disney Plus and, relate the Disney Plus shows and popularity all to the rest of their products and their films and everything they were doing. The opportunity was incredible. But they threw it all away for this woke stuff. Post-COVID, demand for Disney's parks and entertainment remains strong. In the third quarter, Disney reported that Disney Plus subscriptions rose to 152.1 million, adding 14.4 million new subscribers and beating its 147 million forecast. Sales at the park similarly rose to 7.4 billion for the quarter. You think about that, 7.4 billion for the quarter, up 70% from that time last year. That's one hell of a big business. That's almost, what is that, like $30 billion in revenue a year on an average basis? That's a lot of money. 30 billion in revenue? That's a lot. Overall, Disney beat its earnings estimate by $496 million. Investors have taken note. Last month, activist investor Dan Loeb, who we just talked about, bought a substantial new stake in the company, suggesting he believes Disney is undervalued. Because guys like Dan Loeb, they're not going to buy into the company unless they think that the value of the stock is going to go up. Over the past year, Disney has become embroiled in political controversies that have unquestionably damaged Disney's brand. Can't question that. We ask a simple question. What risk-reward calculus justifies taking controversial political positions that risk derailing Disney's otherwise strong economic prospects by alienating a majority of your customer base. This is great that Vivek is making these arguments, and he's making them publicly. You know, when Dan Loeb reached out to Bob Chapek and wrote that letter, essentially Dan Loeb got blown off. But because Dan Loeb was really smart, and he was like, well, why don't we have you guys sell ESPN? You know, just sell ESPN, and, you know, that'd be a good first change to the company. There's no way they were going to sell ESPN. But what it did do is it got Chapek's attention. And you can see from later follow-up statements that Chapek made. Chapek is such a poor negotiator. We'll get into that in another video. But Chapek is letting it known that, we had 100 serious inquiries into buying ESPN when Dan Loeb sent that letter. It's like, yeah, the whole purpose of that was to shake you guys up. That's why he mentioned selling ESPN. And as a result, Loeb got easy access to Chapek after that. And they've had a lot of conversations, according to Chapek, directly according to Chapek, as a result, which was obviously the whole purpose in the first place. Case study, Disney's response to Florida's parental rights in education bill. This was the worst handled situation anyone could ever imagine. Disney's recent response to Florida's parental rights in education bill provides an instructive example of how your politicized behaviors have harmed the company's business interests. Earlier this year, the Florida legislature introduced a bill to reinforce the fundamental rights of parents, according to Florida, right, by, among other things, disallowing classroom instruction on sexual orientation or gender identity in kindergarten through grade 3. Over 2/3 of Americans support such a bill, including majorities of both Republicans and Democrats. A small but vocal minority of Disney employees oppose the bill and ask their employer to do same, as is their right. Disney leadership wisely declined, explaining in a company-wide email, as we have seen time and time again, corporate statements do very little to change outcomes or minds. That's correct. Instead, they're often weaponized by one side or the other to further divide and inflame. Simply put, they can be counterproductive and undermine more effective ways to achieve change. Well, that was an intelligent statement. We applaud Disney's initial business decision to remain neutral. As commentators have explained, a CEO's decision to wade into politics can easily break down civility within a company, alienate a customer base, and generate concerns from shareholders whose ownership stake is being used to trample on their core values. Yeah, it's quite a mess. Likewise, polling shows that while 29% of investors believe it's a good thing for companies to leverage their financial power for political or social means, twice as many, 58%, say that it's not. Yet 2 days later, Disney inexplicably reversed course. The company made a sharp public statement. We were opposed to the bill from the outset, but we chose not to take a public position on it because we thought we could be more effective working behind the scenes. To that end, you claimed you had called DeSantis that morning to express our disappointment and concern that if the legislation becomes law, it could be used to unfairly target gay, lesbian, non-binary, and transgender kids and families. The company further attempted to make a $5 million donation to the Human Rights Campaign, which to Disney's public embarrassment, the organization rejected. We respectfully remind you that while you're free to use your own vast personal resources to advance social causes that you favor, Disney shareholders rewarded you this year with a $20 million annual bonus on top of a $2.5 million base salary. Your sole purpose in making a corporate donation must be to advance the financial interests of Disney stockholders. You go, Vivek. That wasn't the end of it. Disney went further by committing not only to fighting the passage of the Florida bill, but to, quote, increasing our support for advocacy groups to combat similar legislation in other states as well. You vowed to, quote, use our influence to stand up for the rights of all and to be an outspoken champion for the protection, visibility, and opportunity you deserve. After the bill was signed, Disney made good on these promises, issuing a new press release stating, our goal as a company is for this law to be repealed by the legislature or struck down in the courts. As new Disney shareholders, now, I don't see Vivek getting into this, but I have to mention it. This caused DeSantis, the governor of Florida, to work with the legislature, the lawmakers, to have Disney's special status revoked for their theme parks, which is going to cause untold losses. I mean, it's already prevented Disney from opening up that expansion they were going to do. I can't recall the name of the park right now because Disney doesn't even know what the implications of this are. Nobody knows what the implications of it is, that Disney is now not going to be in control of what they call their own special district. And that just means they're going to have many more taxes to pay. It's going to be much more expensive for Disney to operate its theme parks. They're not going to be able to, they're going to have to get permission to do what they want to do. If they want to build new buildings or have new attractions, they're going to have to get permission for all these things. The infrastructure doesn't even exist to give them permission for these things. So it's not impossible they're going to negotiate some kind of a deal with Florida. But it's interfering with business right now. And if they don't make a deal with Florida, and I'll give it one of my 50-50s that they're not going to be able to make a deal with Florida about this, it's going to completely mess up their business potential in Florida. As you can see, $30 billion a year in revenues approximately. The theme parks is a big business. They shouldn't be playing around with this for social justice. As new Disney shareholders, we respectfully ask, why was it Disney's goal as a California headquartered entertainment company to repeal legislation in Florida and other states that had nothing to do with its products or operations? See, what Vivek is saying is like, what are you doing supposedly fighting for social justice? Okay, personally, but you're enlisting the resources of the company to do it on what basis? There is none. Because you're afraid of some of your wacky employees? What's the point? By the way, there's wacky employees of all kinds. It's just employees should not be trying to even force their employer to be involved in situations like this. Those employees should be thrown out. They have no business being there creating this kind of problem. More specifically, why do you believe that these behaviors would increase value for Disney stockholders? Subsequent events suggest that these decisions have damaged Disney's business interests. 61% of consumers disagreed with Disney's final position against the Florida bill, and Disney's public approval cratered from 77% to 33%. Protests erupted outside of Disney theme park gates. Everyday citizens called for boycotts, and hundreds of families followed through. These results should shock no one. 87% of people are either very or somewhat likely to stop using a product or service of a company that advocates for a political agenda. That contradicts their beliefs. And notably, these losses are not outweighed by additional purchases or buy cuts, meaning people that go and they'll buy because they're supporting you. Of course, it's not going to work that way. Disney's activism sowed further discontent even among its employees, the very stakeholder whom Disney was supposedly attempting to appease. The Walt Disney Company has become an increasingly uncomfortable place to work for those of us whose political and religious views are not explicitly progressive, employees wrote in an open letter. Good for those employees. Other employees, including gay ones, penned articles and gave interviews speaking out against Disney's decision to denounce the Florida law. I guess this is how corporations wind up taking over all of government. Something like this. Proper board governance could have prevented measurable economic damage. Your decision to wade into political controversy has inflicted measurable economic damage upon Disney above and beyond the foregoing subjective factors. We know that the state of Florida revoked Disney's special tax district, this is what we were just talking about, under Florida law. That change alone is estimated to cost Disney stockholders $10.6 million per year. More importantly, Florida's decision also means that Disney will lose its ability to self-govern. Upon Florida's announcement, Disney's stock plunged 2.3%, representing an approximate $5.2 billion loss in market value. That's an appropriate estimate of what the immediate damage is. It's absolutely incalculable. It's also something that no other company had, not their competitors, no other companies. A prominent Wall Street analyst stated the obvious at the time: political theater is never great for stock sentiment. Disney's job as a company may be to produce theatrical content for its customers, but it's not the job of Disney's CEO to play the starring role. Indeed, this was one of only many direct losses suffered by Disney at the hands of Florida's government. In 2021, by the way, there is zero chance that this costs Disney $10 million a year. Zero chance. This is going to cost Disney, at an absolute minimum, hundreds of millions of dollars. But it's their whole operating environment for maybe the next, could be 20 or 50 years. That affects their business every day, every year. It affects what they can do in their theme parks. It's amazing. It would be like them losing the intellectual property for, whatever, say the Pixar brand, or even the Marvel characters. Like, it's an amazing hole blown in the middle of Disney for absolutely no reason except that they thought they could be the social justice police. In 2021, Florida also enacted a political anti-discrimination statute that penalized internet companies for engaging in certain kinds of viewpoint-based content moderation. The original version of the law would have included companies like Disney who own internet properties and streaming services such as Disney+. Yet the final text of the statute conspicuously exempted companies in the state that own a theme park or entertainment venue larger than 25 acres. In other words, Disney's internet properties and streaming services were exempted from a statute that otherwise would have covered them. There is little doubt that Disney lobbied expressly in favor of that amendment because the company saw a business benefit to being exempted. Unsurprisingly, the Florida senator who introduced the last-minute exemption, Senator Ray Rodriguez, received campaign donations from various Disney entities in the last election cycle. Clearly, Disney thought the benefit of being exempted from the bill, which carries fines as high as $250,000 per day for violations, was worth the investment. Yet following Disney's opposition to Florida's parental rights and education bill, the Florida legislature voted to rescind Disney's exemption, meaning the statute will now apply to Disney. It just gets worse. It's axiomatic that companies must take public policy into account when making business decisions. For example, on environmental questions, certain of Disney's largest shareholders regularly and vehemently argue that climate risk is investment risk, speculating that policymakers will eventually adopt policies in the future that should influence business decisions today. Disney appears to have heeded this call, regularly taking pains to issue environmental sustainability reports that are not yet required by law. For a company so forward-thinking as to anticipate and prognosticate what future laws may be passed to fight climate change, we find it puzzling that Disney's leadership failed to anticipate a much more predictable policy reaction to its own behaviors. If, quote, climate risk is investment risk, then wading into political controversy is an investment risk too. In Disney's case, one that harmed its business interests today, not 10, 20, 100 years from now. It hurt their business interests today, which affects all shareholders. We know that certain of your largest shareholders promote ESG, environmental social governance factors in their shareholder engagements with large public companies. We recognize that your decisions may be viewed by certain of your shareholders as consistent with advancing certain favored social factors. Given the significance of these issues and the severity of business consequences that predictably followed, as shareholders, we respectfully demand transparent public awareness answers to the following questions. 1. Was Disney's public advocacy relating to the parental rights and education discussed at any point in time with your large ESG promoting shareholders, including but not limited to BlackRock, State Street, or Vanguard? 2. Was your decision... Now, why would he want to know this? Because if you're talking about business decisions that are, for whatever purpose, with only some shareholders instead of other shareholders, that could be a very serious violation. 2. Was your decision to adopt a political position on Florida's Parental Rights and Education Act openly discussed with and approved by your board of directors? We believe the proper board oversight and governance could have mitigated the damage to Disney's business interests resulting from this decision and wish to understand the board's level of engagement on this question. Some of this is written in a very accusatory, well-written way by Vivek Ramaswamy here, and if he doesn't get a response to this, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't see a lawsuit. It would be basically, this is like almost cut and paste for a lawsuit. Disney's behaviors reveal a concerning pattern of harmful political missteps. Unfortunately, Disney's self-inflicted wounds neither started nor ended with the Florida bill. Last year, Disney drew ire for firing actress Gina Carano, who is awesome, over political statements, notwithstanding its inaction in response to other talents with different political persuasions who have made similarly charged public comments. In recent years, Disney threatened to stop filming in Georgia over its abortion laws. More recently, Disney has come under attack for taking a perceived political stance on the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. We note that many other public companies who serve a similar customer base, including Walmart, McDonald's, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, General Motors, Tyson, Marriott, and others, declined to take this course. There is no evidence to suggest that these positions have benefited Disney's stockholders. That is true. And a growing body of evidence to suggest that they've harmed Disney stockholders. So when you see Dan Loeb getting involved with the company, it's not because he thinks they should sell ESPN. It's because of this, because it directly has harmed the stock. People are turning their backs on Disney aggressively, and Disney is just continuing to push in the wrong direction as they destroy all their goodwill. It's really amazing to see. You'd never think you'd see something like this. A 2021 poll showed that 73% of Americans, including most Democrats, thought Disney was wrong to fire Ms. Carano. More than half disagreed with Disney's opposition to Georgia's abortion law. After learning of these events, 60% of Americans said they viewed Disney less favorably, and 58% said they're less likely to watch Disney programming. Overall, 65% of Americans believe Disney has taken its vision of political correctness too far. And while the financial impact of Disney's actions is difficult to quantify, investment analysts have noted that the internet firestorm with calls for a boycott of Disney products explains some of the poor sentiment towards the stock as an additional layer of adding an additional layer of volatility. Basically just meaning it directly hurts the stock. I mean, it's not just Vivek and me and everyone else saying it. It's obvious the stock has been damaged as a result, which affects people's net worth. It's very serious. As shareholders, we're sympathetic to the fact that no executive makes the right business decision every time, and the hindsight offers a useful basis for learning and improvement. Yet you appear to be taking the opposite approach. Disney has not shied away from political controversy. To the contrary, just last week you praised Disney for standing our ground. We find these comments deeply troubling for Disney's future because you're standing your ground at the expense of shareholders. Disney's board owes a fiduciary duty to its actual owners. Fiduciary just means a legal responsibility. We remind Disney's board it owes a fiduciary duty solely to Disney's actual owners, not to a minority of its employees, activist organizations, or to large financial institutions who promote one-sided political agendas. That's accusatory. We understand that you're in a challenging position when Disney's top shareholders promote social and political activism that is not in Disney's best interest. BlackRock, for example, has been Disney's second largest shareholder for the past 8 years and has implored its portfolio companies to act to benefit all of their stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate. It has further touted DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and imposed racial quotas on corporate boards. Sounds bad. Based on these efforts, we understand why you may believe that such shareholders might approve of your politicized behaviors. But here's the reality. These purported shareholders are not the actual owners of your company. And that is true. BlackRock, they don't actually own the stock. They control it on behalf of pension funds. So today, the three largest passive asset managers in the world, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, manage over $20 trillion, approximately equal to the total U.S. gross domestic product. In 2022, these firms were Disney's top three shareholders. By contrast, the actual owners of Disney are not BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, or for that matter, Strive. Strive is his company. Disney's actual owners are the clients of these institutions, everyday citizens whose capital is invested in passively managed index funds. You owe a fiduciary duty to the actual owners of Disney, not to the institutions who claim to represent them. That would be a great lawsuit. There is strong reason to believe that these large asset-backed managers are not acting with their clients' best interests in mind. Indeed, 19 state attorneys general have explicitly accused BlackRock of as much. Last month, they alleged that the company uses the hard-earned money of our state citizens to circumvent the best possible return on investment, regardless of client wishes. And many, if not most, of Disney's real shareholders disagree with the political statements Disney has made. Disney's shareholders include both Democrats and Republicans, Californians and Texans, doctors with 401ks, and steel workers with pensions. Like Disney's customers and Americans more generally, Disney shareholders are not monolithically progressive. And even if these investors wanted their capital to be used for political purposes, and most do not all of them would agree with the positions Disney chose to adopt. Disney must commit to political neutrality. In your latest interview, you stated that Disney, quote, wants to represent a brighter tomorrow for families of all types. All types, of course, includes not only progressive LGBT plus families, but conservative lesbian and gay families, Christian families, Orthodox Jewish families, Republican families, moderate Democrat families, and the like. And the only way to represent a brighter tomorrow for all these customers, to be, in your words, everything to everybody, is for Disney to focus on delivering an excellent customer experience without repeating the mistakes of its recent past. Disney must make clear that it will no longer take political stances on issues unrelated to its core business operations. Because if there's a political issue and it's like, well, but this affects our business directly, they have a right to speak to it. But otherwise, there is no right to speak to it. The company must make clear that it will hold firm to this promise and that it will not waver no matter how important a political social cause is to Disney's employees or its followers on Twitter. While we defer to management on the best way to achieve this goal, our view is such that change will only be possible if Disney formally updates its corporate policy to adopt a position of neutrality ex ante. Basically, they just have to officially say it as part of their corporate policy, so all the employees and everyone that deal with them know that. Such corporate policy would appropriately immunize Disney from criticism either from its liberal constituents or conservative ones. Disney must act now. If Disney continues speaking out on political issues that do not affect its business, it will face even greater pressure to act when they do. And the sides Disney will be expected to take won't be the ones that are favorable to its business. Disney may be pressured to stop operating its cruise line in the name of environmental concerns. Even though its cruise business generates an estimated $1.6 billion per year, the company may be pressured to stop using certain companies in its supply chain based on social issues, even if those companies' suppliers are the best suited to meet Disney's business needs. The possibilities are endless, yet real. Indeed, Disney's initial decision to remain silent on the Florida bill was reportedly motivated precisely by a concern about setting precedent. It is true that the policy may be ill-conceived by those who want Disney to support their own pet causes. Advocates often claim that silence is not an option, that failure to speak itself is hate speech, and that there will be walkouts, boycotts, and repercussions to Disney's business if it does not speak out. Those concerns are largely overblown. Notably, none of the other 5 companies in Florida, big ones, like Publix, J-Bill, Darden, Bloomin' Brands, or Royal Caribbean, spoke out about the Florida bill. There is no evidence to suggest that they suffered any adverse business consequences as a result, as compared to the adverse effects on Disney from its public advocacy. Indeed, some have persuasively argued that Disney's initial misstep with respect to the Florida bill wasn't remaining silent, it was its attempt to publicly defend its decision to remain silent. Adopting a formal written policy may attract mixed attention now, but we believe it will redound to Disney's long-run benefit. Once Disney makes clear that it will no longer wade into political controversies and abides by that commitment, the company's failure to speak out in any specific instance will eventually be a non-event, just as when Disney meets the financial guidance that it sets for Wall Street analysts, meeting its own financial guidance that it sets for analysts. Would-be protesters would learn that their efforts would be better directed elsewhere. This strategy has proven successful in the past. The first time Berkshire Hathaway faced pressure to fight climate change, the company issued a lengthy, thoughtful response on why it won't do so. 6 years later, it refers activists back to its original response. In May, Netflix set a firm policy refusing to engage with employees who objected to its content. If you find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the best place for you. There haven't been any reported employee walkouts or significant media attention since. Critics may argue that companies need to do things that will allow them to realize their higher purpose. And that, boy, he's really thought of everything in this letter. And that they win in the long run by doing so. We agree wholeheartedly. But the curious thing about Disney's recent actions is that there's nothing suggesting that Disney was advancing its core mission or purpose, rather than someone else's. Disney does not further its mission to make ours the world's premier entertainment company when it takes sides on heated partisan issues ranging from abortion to transgender education to young children. Instead, you aptly stated at the outset of the Florida controversy, wading into the political fray serves only to, quote, further divide and inflame. Someone must have written that for him. Strive's request. This is what Vivek wants. Speaking as a shareholder on behalf of our clients, we respectfully urge the company to adopt a formal corporate policy that Disney does not take public positions on political controversies that are unrelated to the company's core business operations. Also, publicly commit to political non-discrimination amongst its employees and customers, including human resources policies which make clear that employees or customers will not be subject to punishment for expressing political views, and commit to making all decisions based on long-term profitability of Disney alone, without regard to social, cultural, or political pressure from employees, activist groups, or other stakeholders. We're invested in Disney's future, and we look forward to continued engagement ahead of next spring's proxy voting season. With best regards, Vivek Ramaswamy, Executive Chairman, Strive Asset Management. Excellent letter. Really, really good, clear, coherent thoughts. I'm definitely going to have a link to this in the description below. Check it out, as well as multiple other links, of course. And let me know what you think of this. I think he covered it perfectly. Let me know if you think Disney's going to respond positively to this or ignore him, or what you think they might do. I'd love to see what you have to say. All right. Thanks again for subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell for notifications, giving me that thumbs up. I do appreciate it. And I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.